Thank you, and thank you, Paul. Paul is one of my dear friends. He's a great man. Whenever I think of Paul, I think of the word integrity. It's absolute in his life. A few words about a look back, a look ahead, ever upward. It was November 1959. I was tired. It was freezing cold. Rain was spattering on the windows of the yellow cab. Why did I let myself get caught up in this, I thought. Just 12 hours ago, I was in the warm sunshine of a beautiful autumn morning in Southern California. This is Dayton, I said to myself, as I signed the register in the old Biltmore Hotel. I was given a key. I rode to the 5th floor. I made my way along a dimly lit corridor, opened the door to a chilly room, turned on the radiator. Morning came. The phone rang. George, this is Chuck Cessna. What are you going to do with the money? This was Mr. Kettering's attorney. He knew when I was coming. What money? I asked. The money in the Winters Bank. I've never been in the Winters Bank. Doesn't matter, he said. There's an account there in your name. It has a credit of $1 million. It'll be some time before you get through your planning and building and need the money, so you better get it invested and earn some interest. The first thing I did was put myself under bond. Sure enough, Mr. Kettering had arranged for $1 million to be deposited in my name. What an expression of confidence. I had not met Mr. Kettering. He only knew that I had been selected by the headquarters of the SDA Church to lead out in developing the proposed Kettering Memorial Hospital, which later became the Kettering Medical Center. That forenoon, I arranged for the appointment of a committee to establish regulations for the handling of the building fund. The committee consisted of Mr. Kettering, Mr. Cessna, Mr. Jones, who was the president of Winters Bank, and me. We had one 15-minute meeting. We took the following 4-part action and adjourned and never met again. Mr. Jones was appointed treasurer of the fund. All funds not immediately needed would be invested in short-term government securities. Any gifts of stock would be sold the day received. I would keep Mr. Jones supplied with schedules of the anticipated needs. During the time of planning and building, the fund earned interest of approximately $184,000. Let's continue to look back for a few more minutes. Mr. and Mrs. Kettering had originally planned to build a 100-bed hospital as a memorial in honor of Eugene's illustrious father, Charles F. Kettering. When they said the hospital should have at least 300 beds. Mr. Kettering challenged them to participate by paying for 100 beds, in which case he would add enough to cover the cost of another 100 beds, making a total of 300. They agreed. On a Sunday morning, November 8, 1959, a group of 30 business and professional leaders flew to Hinsdale, Illinois, to evaluate a Seventh-day Adventist institution. Mr. Kettering having indicated that he would like to have the SDA Church operate the proposed hospital. They returned satisfied. Shortly thereafter, a meeting was held to present to a larger group of Dayton leaders the program. The first speaker, S.C. Allen, Chief Executive Officer of NCR, using the first 7 or 8 large flip charts, which had been prepared by the Public Relations Department of NCR, presented the need for the proposed hospital. Next, Mr. John O'Brien, Vice President of General Motors, spoke of the qualifications of the SDA Church to assume responsibility for creating and operating the proposed institution. He used the next 8 or 10 charts which depicted the medical work of the church around the world. I have never been able to discover where and how they secured the information, but I am told that in the next 20 minutes, those assembled pledged $1.5 million, and when the final tally was made of the funds received, it was not $1.5 million, it was approximately $2 million. Later, the Harrison family provided an additional $875,000 to assist with the cost of a fifth floor to contain 100 beds, bringing the total to 400. Architects Yount, Sullivan, and Lechleiter had been commissioned almost a year before to design the hospital. When I called at their office, they handed me a large roll of plans and asked that I okay them so they could complete the final working drawings. I said I'd like to look at them at first. Then I declined to okay them. It is good that I did. We spent a year making changes. A few of the major changes we made were provide 3 nurses' stations on each floor. They had planned for 1 nurses' station to serve all 3 elements. It was located in the lobby in front of the elevators. We agreed to lengthen the south wing approximately 40 feet to provide additional space and to provide for an emergency and outpatient service which were not included in the original planning. What we did provide was much too small and will be enlarged a second time in the next few years. We agreed to add an auditorium, and there are many other changes that we made, thousands of details that had to be decided. In retrospect, it is clear that a better job could have been done, but in this life, one ordinarily gets just one chance. Another great task, perhaps the most challenging, was to recruit and organize a medical staff and a beginning staff of about 600 employees to operate the hospital. First, the medical staff. A few days after my arrival in Dayton, I was asked to meet with a hospital advisory committee of the County Medical Society. They wanted to ask some questions. Mr. Harley Rice from the medical department of the world headquarters of the SDA Church was with me. We decided that if the physicians wanted to ask us some questions, we had better be prepared with the answers. We listed 20 questions we thought they might ask. Then we prepared the answers. At the appointed time, we met the group. After introductions, the chairman stated, "In anticipation of this meeting, we have prepared some questions." Mr. Rice reached into his pocket, took our paper out, put it on the table, and with a smile said, "In anticipation of this meeting, we have prepared the answers." The questions were read. Mr. Rice picked up his paper and read 16 answers. He skipped the 4 they didn't ask. We relished the applause that followed. A few months later, with cooperation from the County Medical Society, I arranged for the appointment of a committee of physicians to assist in writing temporary staff bylaws, rules, and regulations. The medical staff is a very complex organization. Applications for membership were sent to all the physicians and dentists in the community. We then appointed a temporary executive and credentials committee of the medical staff and reviewed the applications that were received. Those that were approved were called, and a meeting was held, officers elected, and an organized medical staff came into being. Much credit is due Vernon Luthus, Ross Seasley, Dale Putnam, Raymond Beitzel, George Lechner, Lewis Turner, Glenn Bilsma, Peter Granson, Elvin Hedrick, Dean Johnson, the late Robert Taylor, and Robert Craig, and other physicians for creating the foundation for the great medical staff, which I'm told now numbers more than 700. To build a staff of several hundred employees and volunteers with employees recruited from all over the world, was a challenging responsibility. We were fortunate to attract outstanding people to take the leadership in planning and developing period. Martha Johnson, nursing director, Paul Reichert, treasurer, Gordon Zitkowski, personnel director, Myrtle Sather, associate personnel director, Mildred Chase, environmental services, and Charles Mattingly, engineer. Also a great group of secretarial staff, including Beulah Heidinger, Novella McWilliam, Roberta Beck, and Betty Gow. These were the people who, in the beginning, worked in the crowded downtown Office of Planning and Development. What Gordon Zitkowski and Myrtle Sather did in organizing personnel policies, planning an orientation system, recruiting 500 or 600 employees, and then helping them find housing will never be equaled. Mildred Chase became nationally recognized in her field. Martha Johnson's work in creating the nursing organization and Anna Mae Vaughan's accomplishments in laying the groundwork for nursing education and for the Kettering College of Medical Arts are unsurpassed. The debt of gratitude is due those people and to the late Louise Plattner, who joined the staff when the hospital was opened and organized the marvelous volunteer program which continues today. To Scotty Slater, pharmacist who set up the first unit dose dispensing system in this part of the country. To Bob Willett for taking the leadership in organizing a vast array of business procedures. Dr. Hedrick for originating a great medical education program. There are many, many others who are entitled to recognition, but I must refrain. And when I think about the great people that came here to open the hospital and those who have continued, both employees and volunteers and physicians, I think of the little verse written by the great Russian poet Yevtushenko. And incidentally, I saw him on television just a couple of weeks ago when he was making some very favorable remarks about the turn of events in the Soviet Union. He wrote this: "I ask of doctors and dock workers, and of whoever stitches up my coat, things should be done with magnificence. It is no matter what a thing is, nothing should be mediocre. Down from the buildings to pairs of rubber boots. The mediocre is unnatural. What is false is not natural. Command yourself. The lack of greatness is matter for shame. They shall every one be great." Have been open 9,671 days. 468,285 inpatients have been cared for, plus another 48,285 at Sycamore, for a total of 516,735. 8,583, a total of nearly 1.25 million for whom service had been provided up to that date. So far, 2,842 young people have graduated from the Kettering College of Medical Arts, and I'm told the enrollment at this point is now 813 in a building that we originally designed for 250 or 300 people. I don't know how they do it. 488 physicians have completed residencies. 14 chaplains have completed the required training for certification, and 29 individuals have had training in administrative residencies. The Kettering Medical Center is a great educational institution as well as a healthcare provider. It has touched the lives of a vast number of people. This all adds up to 27 years of successful operation, a phenomenal success story. Of course, there have been problems, great problems. There are current problems awaiting solution, but in due time they will be resolved. Then new ones will arise. They will be resolved too. My vision and hope for the future are the same as when I arrived here that bleak, rain-soaked night 32 years ago. Starting in What are the purposes for which KMC was established and will be recognized by the leaders of the future, will be shared and cherished by every worker and staff member, and kept alive throughout the institution? They are summarized in 2 short paragraphs written years ago by one of the founders of what has become a great Adventist healthcare program around the world, with more than 150 hospitals, more than 200 clinics and dispensaries, as well as orphanages and retirement centers. The substance of those paragraphs, which set the pattern for us, is as follows. It, the hospital, should stand forth with scientific ability. It is established to relieve the sick and the afflicted. It is established to awaken a spirit of inquiry, to disseminate light, and to advance reform. These statements warrant some comments. Mr. and Mrs. Kettering and the Dayton community, having asked for Adventist operation of the hospital, and the church having accepted, we have a responsibility to provide what was agreed upon. That means carrying out the above principles. What have we done? First, stand forth with scientific ability. Kettering has been in the forefront in providing access to the latest developments in health care. Kettering was a pioneer in making heart surgery available in this area. Starting in 1965, more than 12,250 open heart procedures have been performed. Kettering was a leader in the movement toward shortening the hospital stay. Its first step in this regard was recognized nationally in 1937 when Mr. Willett received the Lambert Award for originating the Verticare program. Kettering was one of the first in the area to install a CT scanner. Kettering brought to the community the first MRI service. It is now offering the first PET imaging service. It is sharing, in cooperation with other hospitals, the first program in the Dayton area community to provide recently developed non-surgical treatment for a painful kidney affliction. KMC operates with a School of Medicine at Wright State University and maintains a staff of 50 or more residents in several specialties. I believe KMC is still the only medical center in the nation, other than medical school complexes, operating its own accredited junior college for the training of nurses and allied health professionals. This is all part of a program which stands forth with scientific ability. Secondly, relieve the sick and the afflicted. That's our day and night business, carried on by about 3,500 workers, hundreds of volunteers, and a large medical staff. 3, awaken a spirit of inquiry. To me, this means render such impeccable, courteous service that patients will feel free to ask, what's the best way to take care of myself at home during convalescence? Explain to me how to care for myself so as to avoid illness in the future. Why do you recommend a diet which de-emphasizes the use of meat? How can I conquer the smoking habit? Why is Saturday a quiet day here? And many, many more. Disseminate light. Answer the questions and help the questioner as much as is appropriate. It may even cause you, in answering questions, to share your faith. This is also an encouragement to participate in instruction in healthful living at all levels, and disease prevention through formal educational lectures and projects such as a smokers clinic and the operation of the Kettering College of Medical Arts. 5, advance reform. This can mean participate in scientific research and be in the forefront in searching for ways to improve the care of the sick and the injured. For the individual, it might mean keep up with current progress in your field, and whatever you are doing, do it better today than you did yesterday, and still better tomorrow. This all adds up to a continuing search for excellence in patient care, scientifically sound care offered with quiet competence in a serene atmosphere of Christian service. This is what we tried to build into the program for KMC. May it long continue. When Mr. and Mrs. Kettering and the community asked the Adventist Church to operate the Kettering Hospital, the reason was the quality of patient care they had observed in Hinsdale. It was not because the Adventist Church has a worldwide chain of 150 hospitals. It was not because of administrative management skills. It was because they and their friends observed superb patient care in a Christian atmosphere. They were impressed by the quiet, selfless, efficient care. They were particularly impressed by what they observed in a contagious ward where children stricken with poliomyelitis were cared for. It was nothing else. It was observing nurses and those assisting them render care beyond what was asked for. It was because someone saw a person staying after the end of the shift, maybe to smooth a bed that needed to be straightened out, or because a tray was late and it took extra effort to secure it, or because someone observed that a patient, child or adult, needed a little extra attention. Maybe it wasn't asked for, but it was provided because some alert, conscientious person saw a need and responded. This was observed and was the reason Mr. and Mrs. Kettering stirred the Hinsdale community and the Hinsdale Hospital management to work together to rebuild that hospital. It is for the same reason the SDA Church was invited to operate the Kettering Medical Center. Hinsdale and Kettering exist because others saw quiet, efficient, Christian-based sacrificial service in action. Do the same qualities still exist? The Adventist Church is known for its healthcare ministry. It is also known because of its observance of the Sabbath, which may not be one of its most important doctrines, but it fits with its healthcare ministry. In the Scriptures, the Sabbath is known as a day for healing, and it was the day Christ chose on which to perform 7 of his great miracles of healing. I close with a few excerpts of a brief description of a Sabbath day I experienced and wrote about 26 years ago. The western sky is brilliantly lighted. The light from the setting sun is reflected from the clouds. Across the meadow and through the trees, I see the hospital as I stand in front of the windows in my study. The lights in the parking areas around the hospital are aglow. There are lights in the windows of the patients' rooms. It is the beginning of the Sabbath. As I view the impressive scene, the words of the poet Bourdillon pass through my mind. The night has 1,000 eyes, the day but one. Yet the light of the bright world dies with the setting sun. The mind has 1,000 eyes, but the heart but one. Yet the light of a whole life dies when love is done. What is beyond the lights as they glow as the sky fades and the feeble man-made lights stab at the darkness that is closing in? I can see the glistening tops of hundreds of cars, and I know that some of the cars have brought anxious relatives and friends to stand for a few minutes at the bedside of the sick ones. Some have brought physicians to take the lead in working over mangled bodies from a shattering calamity on the highway. The light in one of the windows seems not so bright as the others, and I offer a silent prayer that the night will not be a frightening time to the one whose years are full and whose quietness indicates that a long rest is coming. And I pray silently that special skill and tenderness will be given to the people who will work through the night, sometimes with numbing weariness, while attending the sick. I thought about last night. I walked through the hospital. The room that was dimly lighted last night is empty now. One of the two boys brought in that chattering rack on the highway is in the intensive care ward, only one. I pray that God will give comfort to the anguished parents. I stop at the admitting desk. I learned that 7 patients will go home today. I think of the 7 who were healed and made to walk on the Sabbath day 2,000 years ago. I pray silently for special blessings for the 7 who will walk today. Once again, my wife and I are standing at the window. The western sky is brilliantly colored. The light from the setting sun is reflected in the clouds. The lights are beginning to show in the parking area in the windows of the hospital. 8 of the windows are dark. I think of the tired old man who's resting now. I think of the 7 who walked today. I open my Bible to the 5th chapter of John and read about Jesus, who on a Sabbath day 20 centuries ago said, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." I pray that there may be extra blessings for all who worked through the hours of the Sabbath, that the ills of others might be assuaged. In the distance, from the direction of Highway 75, a siren sounds.